Hello, I'll be telling you about Saint Francis of Assisi. If you're like me, you may not have known about him to begin with. His name was Francesco. His father gave him the name Francesco when he was really, really young, but his mother had originally named him after John the Baptist. But his father didn't want him to be religious, thus the renaming. Well, he was born into a wealthy family, and he was known to be partying, drinking, things not normally associated with the church. And when he was about 20 years old is about the time that he stopped partying, drinking. The reason being he wanted to join the military. The deciding factor in him making that decision was he was a prisoner in this town-to-town skirmish. He became a prisoner because he was wealthy, part of a wealthy family. They would pay to have him ransomed. Well, while he was going to go to join the military, he was traveling to join the military. He had this dream that told him to turn back. It wasn't what was meant for him. So it was a noticeable dream, first off. It wasn't just a random dream like telling him to turn back. He noticed that it wasn't normal. Well, he didn't know what he really wanted to do still. So he went through traveling, trying to see. He wasn't sure. He went on a pilgrimage to the tomb of St. Peter, and something that stuck in his mind was the meager offerings that were given. He It stuck on his mind even when he came back from the pilgrimage. Well, he was at his town church praying, and all of a sudden he heard this voice again, and then it told him to go, Francis, and repair my house, which, as you see, is falling into ruin. Which you, anyone pretty much that heard that, including Francis at the time, thought that it was the literal house, the church that he was in, but it did not mean the house. It meant the people of the church, or which can include people of several different churches. It can include people that aren't in church yet. That's just how religion would be. It's not just the house that it is. Well, he tried to pay, since Francis didn't think it was meant that people thought it meant the literal church that he was in. He tried to pay to have it rebuilt. To pay for to have it rebuilt, he went to his father's shop, grabbed some cloth, really good cloth apparently, or all the cloth. Did not Information did not give me that. Some information said it took just some really fine red cloth, or some information said it took all his cloth and went into town and sold it. He also sold the horse that he rode into town with, and went to the church to give the money to the priest of that church, and the priest did not accept it because he didn't accept the money that he had gotten that way. Well, Francis immediately went to go hide in some cave because his father was going to be angry, but he had to come back after a month because he was starving, didn't know how to live out in the wild. Well, his father found him, beat him, and locked him up. He was shortly released by his mother and went to the church to request sanctuary. And his father was still angry, went to go get the lawyers of that time to get him to pay for what he had done, the stealing. Well, whenever they met him at the church, Francis uh, gave up all of the belongings that he currently had, including the clothes off his back, and the inheritance that he would get whenever his father had died, and became began his life as a religious person, preacher, essentially. He he worked at a monastery for a short time as just a scullion, but he went around, but he was begging for the stones to rebuild that church, his town church that he had originally heard the message in, because he still thought it meant literal building, not the people. And eventually he did rebuild it. Actually, he did rebuild several churches throughout his life. Well, he also went around preaching, which is what I'm assuming that is what the voice literally meant. And he started attracting this following of men to the way he was living. Whenever it had gotten to 11 people, making it 12 total, the number of disciples, they went to get the order authorized by Pope Innocent III, and Francis called the order the Friars Minor. Minor at that time did not mean like it's a minor order, small. It meant that it's more like a term used for the poor at the time. Well, eventually this Francis and his order attracted a young woman to this same life, and that led him to create the order called the Poor Clares. Claire was actually the name of that original woman, so that was pretty neat, I guess, for her. And eventually, Francis, because he preached most of his life, he was preaching in this small town called Camara, and this congregation of people were so moved by his preaching and his way of life that the whole congregation, not just most, the whole congregation, it says, asked to be join his order or begged to join his order, and he named them the Brothers and Sisters of Penance. That's pretty much all he did throughout his life. He started out as a wealthy man, having anything he could possibly need, and he gave it all up for his religion. It was just so strong for him, and he was able to make several followings because of his strong beliefs. He didn't have to. He wasn't in goal line to make these orders. They just happened along the way, and that's pretty much what happened throughout his life. And